starting your car is effortless. You press a button or turn a key, and within a second, a small electric starter motor spins the engine until combustion takes over. Purpose: establish a familiar reference point every viewer immediately understands. Now imagine scaling that idea up, not to a pickup truck, not even to a locomotive, but to one of the largest low-speed, two-stroke marine engines ever built. Purpose: shift from everyday engineering to extreme scale. These engines are taller than a house. A single connecting rod can outweigh an entire passenger car. So the obvious solution seems simple. Why not build a much larger starter motor? Purpose: present the assumption most viewers are about to make. But that's not how these engines start. The real challenge isn't producing more power. It's getting the crankshaft, pistons, and connecting rods moving together from a complete standstill. Purpose: shift the audience's thinking from raw power to coordinated movement. That's why a giant ship can't simply use a bigger version of your car's starter. So, if there isn't a giant starter motor, what creates that very first turn? The engine is completely still. Nothing is moving. So where does the first rotation come from? Purpose: reinforce that the engine has not started yet. The answer was stored long before the engine needed it. Not in a giant battery, not in a larger starter motor, but in compressed air. Purpose: introduce the hidden energy source before explaining how it works. Large low-speed marine engines store compressed air in dedicated air receivers. In many systems, that air is stored at around 30 bar, roughly 30 times atmospheric pressure. At that pressure, it becomes stored mechanical energy. Purpose: show why compressed air can perform mechanical work. When the control system gives permission to start, a starting valve opens. Compressed air flows into a cylinder above the piston. The pressure pushes the piston downward, turning the crankshaft for the first time. Purpose: reveal the complete starting principle in one continuous animation. That's the key difference. A car turns the engine from the outside. A giant marine engine turns itself from the inside. Left: starter motor driving the flywheel. Right: compressed air pushing the piston. Purpose: deliver the video's first major aha moment. If you're enjoying discovering how giant machines really work, consider subscribing for more engineering documentaries. One air pulse can only move one piston, so how does the engine keep turning instead of stopping immediately? Purpose: create the curiosity gap leading into Section 3. That first burst of air gets the crankshaft moving, but it won't keep the engine turning. Purpose: show that one air pulse creates motion, but not continuous rotation. Each cylinder can push only once during its stroke. So the starting system immediately switches to the next cylinder, then the next. Purpose: introduce sequential cylinder control as the real starting strategy. Each air pulse arrives at exactly the right crankshaft angle, where it produces the greatest turning force. Purpose: connect precise timing with efficient rotation. Correct timing equals maximum turning force. Think of pushing a playground merry-go-round. Push at the wrong moment, and you waste your effort. Push at the right moment, and every push adds more speed. Purpose: turn an abstract timing concept into an intuitive example. The engine works the same way. Each cylinder adds just enough energy for the next one to take over. Within seconds, those individual pushes become one smooth rotation. Purpose: reveal that continuous rotation comes from coordinated timing, not one powerful cylinder. The crankshaft is turning, the pistons are moving, but the engine still isn't producing its own power. Rotation not equal to self-sustaining engine. Purpose: prevent viewers from assuming the start sequence is complete. Bridge to Section 4. Before fuel can take over, the engine must first be given permission to start. The crankshaft is turning, but the engine still can't run. Purpose: Shift the viewer from mechanical movement to system control. One question remains. Who decides the engine is ready? On an engine this large, rotation alone isn't enough. Before fuel is injected, the control system verifies that every critical condition has been met. Purpose: introduce start permission as a system decision rather than a mechanical one. Lubrication must already be available. The starting air system must be ready. No safety system can report an active fault. Only then does the control system allow fuel injection. Think of an aircraft waiting for takeoff. The engines may be running, but it still can't leave until every system reports ready. The same logic applies here. Purpose: explain system authorization through a familiar real-world example. The engine wasn't waiting for more power, it was waiting for permission before combustion. Purpose: deliver the section's key takeaway in one memorable sentence. Starting the engine isn't a single action. It's a controlled sequence: mechanical rotation, system verification, fuel injection, combustion, mechanical rotation, system verification, fuel injection, combustion. Purpose: summarize the process without repeating earlier explanations. Bridge to section 5. Now everything is ready. So what happens in the split second when compressed air hands the engine over to combustion? Everything is ready. Now comes the most critical moment of the entire start sequence. Purpose: build tension immediately before combustion begins. Until now, compressed air has been turning the engine. Now the engine must power itself. Starting air to combustion. Purpose: introduce the handover without repeating previous explanations. As the crankshaft turns, the air inside each cylinder is compressed. When pressure and temperature are high enough, fuel is injected. Purpose: show the exact moment combustion begins. Unlike a gasoline engine, no spark is needed. Compression alone creates enough heat to ignite the fuel. Left: spark plug ignition. Right: compression ignition inside the marine diesel cylinder. Purpose: explain compression ignition with one clear comparison. For the first time, combustion produces enough power to keep the crankshaft turning. Purpose: deliver the section's main payoff. The handover has to be seamless. If combustion starts too late, the engine loses momentum. Once combustion becomes stable, the starting air valves close automatically. Starting air, combustion. Purpose: visualize the overlap without unnecessary technical detail. From this point on, every revolution is powered by combustion. The starting air system has finished its job. Purpose: mark the end of the starting sequence. That's the hidden reason giant ships don't need a giant starter motor. Compressed air only starts the rotation. Combustion keeps the engine running. Purpose: connect the invisible engineering to the visible result. Bridge to section 6. So why can one ship restart within minutes, while another needs much longer before anyone can even press start? The answer isn't the engine. It's everything that has to be ready first. By now, the starting process seems simple. So why do some engineers say a ship can restart in minutes, while others say it can take much longer? Both can be right. Purpose: introduce the final misconception without repeating the mechanics. The difference usually isn't the engine. It's how ready the engine is before the start command. Same engine, different readiness. Left: systems already operating. Right: systems still shut down. Purpose: shift the viewer's attention from hardware to operational readiness. Imagine two identical ships. One has only been stopped briefly. The other has been idle for hours. From the outside, they look exactly the same. Inside, they don't. Purpose: show that readiness is invisible. A recently stopped engine may already have essential support systems available. After a long shutdown, those systems often need time to become operational before the engine can even begin its normal start sequence. Purpose: Explain the difference without repeating earlier system checks. That's why there isn't one universal start time. The countdown begins long before anyone presses start. Preparation begins before start. Purpose: deliver the section's practical takeaway. So when someone says, "These engines start in minutes," or "they take much longer," they're usually describing different operating conditions, not different engines. Purpose: resolve the apparent contradiction. Bridge to Section 7. So, what actually starts a giant ship? Not one machine, an entire system working together. At the beginning, the answer seemed obvious. If a car uses a starter motor, why shouldn't a giant ship use a much bigger one? Purpose: bring viewers back to the original question before delivering the payoff. Now the answer is clear. A giant ship doesn't need a bigger starter. It needs a system that starts in the right order. Purpose: shift the viewer's perspective from one component to the entire starting process. Every system has one job. Compressed air creates the first rotation. The control system verifies the engine is ready. Combustion takes over. Preparation: starting air. Combustion. Purpose: summarize the process without repeating earlier explanations. That's why these engines are so reliable. No single component does all the work. Each system hands the job to the next. Purpose: connect the starting sequence with reliable operation. The larger a machine becomes, the more important coordination becomes, then brute force.